Undeclared wars are commonplace. Tragically, our government engages in preemptive war, otherwise known as aggression, with no complaints from the American people. Sadly, we have become accustomed to living with the illegitimate use of force by government. To develop a truly free society, the issue of initiating force must be understood and rejected.
What if sometimes, to love your country, you had to alter or abolish the government? What if Jefferson was right? What if that government is best which governs least? What if it is dangerous to be right when the government is wrong? What if it is better to perish fighting for freedom than to live as a slave? What if freedom's greatest hour of danger is now?
Hi, everyone. Judge Andrew Napolitano here for Judging Freedom. Today is Monday, February 23rd, 2026. My dear friend Larry Johnson will be with us in just a moment on President Trump's decision-making and Mike Huckabee's buffoonery. How dangerous is that? But first this. Don't you just cringe when people say, "I told you so"? Sorry, I told you gold and silver would reap the benefits due to excessive money printing, inflation, and global uncertainty. It's here. It's happened. Gold and silver have reached all-time highs. Did you call Lear Capital and buy some? It's not too late. Experts are predicting higher prices ahead. Why? Nothing has changed. Geopolitical chaos, cost of living crises, and a weaker dollar are driving central banks to boost their gold reserves. Forecasts suggest gold could hit $6,000 an ounce and silver $200 an ounce. Even Morgan Stanley ditched the 60-40 rule for 60-20-20, putting 20% into precious metals. They're getting educated, and you should too. Call the best in the business and the people I trust. Lear Capital. Get their reports, get the facts, get some gold and silver. Tell them the judge sent you and get up to $20,000 in bonus gold or silver. Call 800-511-4620 or go to LearJudgeNap.com. Larry Johnson, good day to you, my friend. Thank you, as always, for accommodating my schedule. Before we get to the president's decision-making on attacking Iran, and before we get to the buffoonery of his ambassador in Tel Aviv, how dangerous was it for the British to have orchestrated an attack on a Russian machine shop that makes parts for nuclear weapons, 1,300 kilometers from the Russian-Ukraine border?
Yeah, on a scale of 1 to 10, I think this is a 10. The word circulating in Moscow is that Medvedev in particular, since, this was his area of responsibility, overseeing the production of the war material for Russia. We can't rule out that Russia will retaliate by hitting the factory, the plant in England that was producing these missiles. So this carries a very high risk of expanding this war. But I think it's something that if it was just this, it's one thing. But as Alistair pointed out as well in your earlier conversation with him, the fact that the Brits were implicated in the attempt to kill the number 2 guy in the military intelligence outfit in Russia.
Right.
Now this. And then you go back over the last 4 years, the different things that the Brits have done. The odds are high that Russia's not going to sit back and just let this say, "Oh, this is no big deal." No, it is a big deal.
What are the odds that the Brits acted alone or in conjunction with CIA? And if it was in conjunction with CIA, would the Oval Office have known about it?
I think it's highly likely that the CIA knew about it. I don't think the CIA said, "Oh, don't do that," or they said, "Let's see what happens." It's the sort of passive aggressive. But it sounds like this was a pure British initiative. But again, the United States was in a position to stop it and didn't. which will bring us back to this whole issue of how solid, how real are these negotiations between the United States and Russia. I maintain that I think the Russians are making actually a big mistake by continuing to entertain these negotiations, because the United States is not serious about reaching a settlement with Russia that will respect Russia's right and ensure Russia's security concerns. It's all a charade. This is part of trying to, I believe, lull Russia into a false sense of security, while the United States continues subversive activities in Armenia, in Azerbaijan, in Georgia, in the Baltics, because we're not going to stop until Russia is dismantled.
Wow. But let's get back to the CIA. Would agents on their own, or forgive me, officers on their own,
Right,
have been in a position to collaborate on this with MI6? Would it have to go to Ratcliffe? Would it have to go to Gabbard? Would it have to go to the president?
It may not have gone to the president, but Ratcliffe surely would have been involved. And CIA officers are not freelancers. They are
Theoretically.
consummate bureaucrats. In other words, they're not going to take risks unless they are sure that they've got a chain of command that backs them up. I mean, there have been instances in the past. People like Bob Baer was sent out on a mission. It was fully vetted up and down the chain of command. And then when he gets off the plane coming back from Iraq, he's accused of planning to assassinate Saddam Hussein. And but he was ultimately cleared of that. But overall, there's no incentive to sort of stick your head up above the crowd and take a risk and do something that could be, create a problem. So that's why I say there's a risk avoidance in that. But once they've set out, here's the mission, they'll do everything they can to accomplish that mission, because their evaluation when it comes time to get promoted hinges upon how well they did their job based upon what the task was.
Our friend and colleague Scott Ritter reported early this morning that Oreshniks were put on alert. I mean, what would be the international response if an Oreshnik destroyed a British factory in Great Britain?
Going to be howls of outrage, but I think Russia's going to make it very clear that they are done allowing themselves to be attacked. They've tried to contain this in the past, and again, there's an old expression I learned when I was in Latin America that people confuse goodness with being foolish, with being an idiot. And Russian restraint in the past against activities that, had they been done to the United States, we would view it as a cause of war, a casus belli. And instead, Russia has allowed it to go past. And the West, it says, see, we can keep pushing them and pushing them and pushing them. So the Oreshnik was designed exactly for this kind of scenario, where it can, if Russia launches it, it can hit that factory where that missile was produced in London or outside of London, and they'll try to, I think, do it at a time when there are no people there to minimize civilian casualties, but they can destroy the physical infrastructure.
Moving to Iran, Larry, is the attack now, the U.S. attack now, inevitable?
I don't know, because on the one hand, we have got all this military power that is, or combat air power, I should say, that's being collected in the region. There are two carriers, but we've had two carriers in the area in the Red Sea last March, and that didn't prove to be decisive. But when you have all this combat air power, the F-35s, the F-22s, the F-18s, the F-16s, I mean, it's cocked and loaded. I know that people who are involved on the military side of the House were fully anticipating that they'd get the order to go over the weekend. But then there have been a number of different factors that have intervened that make it unlikely, but at least for right now. One is that it's reported that J.D. Vance and Tulsi Gabbard have been very active and pushing and warning Trump, you're going to kill your base. You're going to make it impossible for Republicans to win in the midterm. There was a survey that was conducted, sort of an emergency poll that produced that showed those results, and that temporarily sobered Trump up. On the other hand, there is enormous pressure from the Zionist crowd, the Christian Zionists, the Israeli Zionists, to go strike Iran. There is pressure within senior military leadership who believe we got to act now or else the moment will pass. So Trump is really caught between the proverbial dog and the fire plug, and he's not sure which way to go so far. And then you've got the State of the Union message Tuesday night or tomorrow night. And is Trump going to start a war with Iran and then try to hold that speech and where he's supposed to be the center of attention? So I don't see anything happening in the next 2 days. But you know what? I could be wrong on that because you've got this whole system. It's on a hair trigger. And that's the problem. It can get triggered with something unexpected.
Do atmospheric conditions and does the moon, as silly as this sounds, does the moon have anything to do with this?
Well, the Air Force planners, and it's sort of tradition. They've always thought, and when you're going to carry out and initiate an attack, you want to start it during hours of darkness. And so the moon phase was important. It was, we had really the full blackout on Friday night, Saturday, and then to a lesser extent yesterday. Now, as we're moving into this week, the moonlight's going to grow, not diminish, over the next 3 weeks. So the feeling is that this was the opportune time to go. On the other hand, Trump could say, well, we're going to do it regardless. And you can make a case that modern avionics are such that it doesn't matter whether you're in the dark or in the light, because the systems that are going to attack inbound aircraft and the radar, they don't have to have visible light to work. But I'm just telling you, the military planners, when they're doing the planning, their thought is, we want to prefer hours of darkness. You go back to June 24th when we launched that attack on the Iranian nuclear facilities that Trump claimed he obliterated. That was done in full hours of darkness. The attack on Maduro was not. It was, really full moonlight, which is unusual, but I attributed that to the fact that we had wired that thing in advance. The deal was done behind the scenes. We knew that we weren't going to face any kind of attacks from air defense, etc. So we could do it in full moonlight. But I'm just telling you, the Air Force planners who are involved with this, they're briefing their bosses on hours of darkness.
Right. Okay. Got it. You mentioned the polls. It's hard for me to believe that the American public, unless it's totally duped by Trump and his acolytes, think that that nukes have anything to do with this.
Yeah,
In fact, this is regime change, not a democracy, but a government that the U.S. can control. That's what Israel wants. That's what Trump wants. It has nothing to do with nukes.
Yeah, this is where Trump is making a real error, a fatal error, I believe. When George W. Bush went in and attacked Iraq, it was an illegal attack, but nonetheless, he had 75% backing of the American public. Yeah, well, we had the right to do this. When we went into Iraq in the first Gulf War back in 1990, 36 years ago, good Lord. Again, that had the imprimatur of UN backing. Trump doesn't have any backing on this now. I mean, he's doing it with what appears to be between 20 and 25% of the American public support this. So that means well over 70%. And he's not sought congressional authorization. And the importance of that is if you get congressional authorization and things go badly, which they very well could, at least can say, hey, why did you guys let me do this? I'm not at fault. You told me to do it. But instead, it's all on him. And if he proceeds with this attack, and Iran will do damage to us, damage that will not be able to be spun as, oh, this is no big deal. And they have the potential that the ships could be sunk, and there will be aircraft shot down. There will be pilots that are being that have been captured and are held as POWs by Iran. At that point, I think the prospects for an impeachment of Donald Trump for going to war without congressional authorization would find, I think, a lot of momentum, and his presidency would be over.
Here he is in the past number of years, actually, or the past number of months, saying Iran doesn't have a nuclear weapon because we destroyed it. Cut number one.
Last summer, I ordered devastating strikes on Iran's key nuclear facilities and achieving total obliteration of the Iran nuclear potential capability, totally obliterated.
They've been enriching well beyond the number that you need for civil nuclear. It's up to 60%. They're probably a week away from having industrial grade bomb making material.
We assess that the American strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities has set back Iran's ability to develop nuclear weapons for many years to come. The nuclear threat of Iran, that was totally obliterated. Iran, where we wiped out their nuclear capacity for weapons. They totally obliterated the potential nuclear supply of Iran. In June, we obliterated Iran's nuclear enrichment capacity.
They're probably a week away from having industrial grade bomb making material.
So how can you believe anything he says?
I guess Witkoff didn't get the memo. Okay, It's obliterated. They're not a week away. I thought he does a better job of saying that line than Bibi Netanyahu does. Remember, Netanyahu would always appear at the United Nations and next week, boy, they're going to have it this next week. We've got to stop them now. Yeah, this is not about Iran's so-called quest for nuclear weapons. This is about regime change, and the CIA continues to be actively involved with a disinformation campaign that's targeted not at Iran, it's targeted at the American public. And the essence of it is, look, Iran has killed 30,000 Iranians. No, it's 50,000. The number keeps going up. That they've killed them. We got to go in to stop it. And the Ayatollah doesn't have support. The people are rising up. They want him to go. All we've got to do is just give a little push. This is all part of a manufactured CIA disinformation campaign, and they've been using open sources like USAID and National Endowment for Democracy to help perpetuate this lie. And so most people believe, oh yeah, Iran's on the brink. They're teetering. All we got to do is just give them a little push, and bam, that's going to come down.
Here's how broad and deep this madness has been going on. Chris, we call this clip Bibi's Madness. Cut number 4.
The deadline for attaining this goal is getting extremely close. And Iran, by the way, is also outpacing Iraq in the development of ballistic missile systems that they hope will reach the eastern seaboard of the United States within 15 years. By next spring, at most, by next summer, at current enrichment rates, they will have finished the medium enrichment and move on to the final stage. From there, it's only a few months, possibly a few weeks, before they get enough enriched uranium for the first bomb. The foremost sponsor of global terrorism, could be weeks away from having enough enriched uranium for an entire arsenal of nuclear weapons, that would place a militant Islamic terror regime weeks away from having the fissile material for an entire arsenal of nuclear bombs.
Isn't it true that none of that is true?
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, particularly this specious claim that Iran's the number one sponsor of terrorism, international terrorism. And let's be clear, the definition of terrorism, the use of violence on civilians for political purposes. And one way that you measure it is fatalities, number of people wounded. And the statistics that CIA collects, the State Department, my old office there, now the Bureau of Counterterrorism, publishes every April. April 30th is the deadline set by Congress and has been doing so since 1990. That shows that over 80% of all terrorism in the last 36 years is carried out by Sunni elements. And those are elements that hate Iran. So Iran's not involved with that at all. And even when you look at the actual statistics, not my numbers, the numbers put out by the Israeli Foreign Ministry, they've got a website, they list every attack since 2000 that shows only 672 attacks on Palestinians in terms of, like bombs, shootings, car attacks. And of those, Hamas is only credited with 105 of the 672 attacks. So this notion that Iran's sponsoring both Hamas and Hezbollah, and they're carrying out these massive strikes, the reality with Hezbollah, they target primarily military personnel, military sites. And even in that targeting, they fired like 20,000 missiles or 20,000 rockets over the last, say, 25 years, and have caused a grand total of between 50 and 65 dead. And I don't want to say that just even one death is, no big deal, but let's stop with this lie that they are in the same category as the Taliban, as ISIS, as Al-Qaeda, as Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, which we helped fund and now installed the new president, al-Shara, in Syria. So, I mean, it's just, again, the hypocrisy on this. And what's fascinating is the role that the West has played and Israel has played in promoting some of these terrorist organizations. And then they turn around and claim, oh my God, look at what they're doing. So you've got that, and then you've got the whole nuclear weapons canard. And the Iranians have been quite consistent, at least under the guidance of the Ayatollah. To produce a nuclear weapon would be a sin against God. And as a religious society, they've refused to go down that road. They very well could have. They have the capability, but they chose not to. And now we're in the ironic situation where here's Iran that supports and is a signatory to the Non-Proliferation Treaty. Israel is not. Here's Iran that's willing to make a deal that will guarantee it doesn't have nuclear weapons, while Israel continues to build and maintain nuclear weapons completely outside of the rule of international law.
Here's a very succinct and excellent analysis of this from a friend of ours at the Quincy Institute. Chris, cut number 5.
Trump has been sold a narrative by the Israelis that portrays Iran far, far weaker than it actually is. And as a result, he's adopting maximalist, capitulation positions that are simply unrealistic based on how the power reality actually looks. The Iranians are undoubtedly weaker than they were 2 years ago, but not as weak as the Israelis have been telling Trump they are. And as a result, he is confused, frustrated that they haven't capitulated yet, but the capitulation simply is not in the card because they're not as weak as Trump believes. Unless this gets corrected, that even if the Iranians put forward a very far-leaning proposal that is extremely attractive to the U.S., Trump may still say no because he's under the false belief that he can get something even better.
Mossad, CIA, and Netanyahu himself lying to Trump.
Well, no, they've created a narrative where if you try to bring out what is I believe is the truth, you're shouted down, you're shut out, and you're punished. That was true to Parsi, and I disagree with one thing that he says, that Iran is potentially weaker than it was 2 years ago. Oh, hell no. They're much, much stronger, because 2 years ago, while they had security agreements in place with both Russia and China, they were bilateral agreements, number one, and they were restricted, and they didn't fully engage on the military front beyond conducting joint military exercises. And it was no coincidence that on January 29th, in the aftermath of the Western attempt to fuel a color revolution in Iran, that the Iranians signed a trilateral security agreement with China and Russia combined, and that Russia and China have been providing extensive material support, intelligence support, and so Iran right now is militarily stronger than it ever has been in its history in terms of air defense, radar, as well as the Russians supplied attack helicopters, which have a capability both to defeat drones and to defeat insurgent forces that the West is going to try to insert into Iran via Kurdistan.
And then there's this, cut number 2.
Christian Zionism. I want to go back because that's where we started.
I'm not going to let you off on this because you have said it 3 times that God gave this land to this people. And so it is entirely fair for me with respect to ask, what land are you talking about? Because I just read Genesis 15, as I have many times. And that land, I think it says, from the Nile to the Euphrates, which is, once again, basically the entire Middle East. So God gave that land to his people, the Jews, or he didn't. You're saying he did. What does that mean? Does Israel have the right to that land? Because you're appealing to Genesis. You're saying that's the original deed.
It would be fine if they took it all.
It would be fine if they took it all. How does that play in Riyadh or Cairo?
Well, it was like detonating a nuclear bomb. They didn't, the countries, all of the countries in the Levant and the surrounding areas in the Gulf, all Egypt, Turkey, Jordan, Iraq, Syria, on top of it, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, United Arab Emirates, they all came together on signing this démarche, claiming that just protesting what was done, what Huckabee said. They saw it as sort of revealing the true plans. And let's note, Saudi Arabia and United Arab Emirates are at odds right now, potentially going to war with one another. And yet, here's Mike Huckabee. He's the great uniter. He even brought them together. They all agree this is outrageous, because it really pulled the mask off of it, that this is what the heart of this Zionist project is to take the land from the people who've lived on it and to use it only for the benefit of Israel. And so I think that was one other factor, because Jordan signed on to it, Saudi Arabia signed on to it. Those are the two main locations where U.S. military assets are parked right now in preparation for an attack on Iran. And it would not surprise me at all if both of them said, no, you're not using our territory now to attack Iran. So even had Trump wanted to do so, those countries are now going to have intervened, I believe, to say, not right now. So they've got some cleanup to do on aisle 4.
Putting it mildly. Larry, thank you very much, my dear friend. Great analysis as always. Look forward to seeing you at the end of the week with Ray McGovern.
stay warm, and don't shovel snow. Get someone else to do it, okay?
You got it, my friend. It's 18 inches here in New York and still coming down, but you got it, my friend. Thank you.
Okay.
And Ray McGovern will be here in just a few minutes if you're watching us live at 10 o'clock and at 2 o'clock this afternoon on all of this, particularly on the British attack on a Russian munitions factory. Scott Ritter, Judge Napolitano for Judging Freedom.
Christian Zionism. I want to go back because that's where we started.
I'm not going to let you off on this because you have said it 3 times that God gave this land to this people. And so it is entirely fair for me with respect to ask, what land are you talking about? Because I just read Genesis 15, as I have many times. And that land, I think it says, from the Nile to the Euphrates, which is, once again, basically the entire Middle East. So God gave that land to his people, the Jews, or he didn't. You're saying he did. What does that mean? Does Israel have the right to that land? Because you're appealing to Genesis. You're saying that's the original deed.
It would be fine if they took it all.